Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on effective data visualization. So I am the faculty chair for the program. And so what I thought I'll do here is maybe spend approximately 15 to 20 minutes giving you a flavor of what to expect in the program and the topics that are going to get covered, and then we will open up the discussion. So after that, maybe you can put in your questions in the Q&A box. Okay? So along the way, I will be using the chat window as well. When I actually, when I ask you to use the chat window, please do put in your answers there as we go along. Okay, so just a very brief introduction to where I come from. So I actually have a PhD in computer science, and my field is in distributed computing. So grid computing, cloud computing. So that's traditionally what I'm trained for, and that's my field of research as well in terms of networks, ad hoc networks, and things like that. How I happened to get into data visualization is after my PhD from UChicago, I worked at IBM Research in New York for a couple of years. And after that, and this is all in distributed computing. And then when I moved to IME, I started looking at something that would make sense for our MBA students here. So topics that would be helpful to them. And that is how I got into data visualization, both learning and teaching data visualization. It's been around 8 to 9 years now for me in the field of data visualization. And the course that I teach the MBA students has become very, very popular. They find it very, very useful. And that's how I have expanded into this particular domain. Right? And of course, and then at some point started offering this for our XED programs as well. Do we already have a question? Shuli? So when we actually talk about data visualization, this is a relatively new field, right? And this comes under the larger umbrella of data science. So if you talk about data science as an umbrella field, data visualization is part of that, but it's very unique. It's unique in the sense this is at the amalgamation of 3 distinct disciplines. And those 3 disciplines are statistics, design, and communication. Right? So data visualization lies at the center of these 3 distinct disciplines, and it borrows heavily from elements of statistics, elements of design, elements of communication, and without even one of these components, our exploration of creating effective visualizations would be incomplete. So which is why this is a unique field, and it's cross-disciplinary in nature. So you have to have a bit of grounding in all of these elements before you can actually get good at this particular new domain, right, in that sense. So what we're going to do now is I'll ask you a series of questions. So these are very simple questions that you have to answer looking at whatever the constructs that I show you. And I want you to type your answer in the chat window. Okay? Oh, so let's look at the first question. Which graph makes it easier to determine whether mid-cap US stock or small-cap US stock has the greater share? Can all of you type in your windows? Answer the question. Which graph makes it easier to determine whether mid-cap or small-cap has the greater share? Okay. So for most people, it is the bar graph versus the pie chart. So I can see most of you answering that it is the bar graph. For those of you who did answer it's the pie chart, look at it again and try to answer this question before you put it down. Now, if you think about it, pie charts are very, very commonly used across all situations, especially in business context. But there are great limitations to the pie chart, right? Especially when we encapsulate quantitative information in 2D instead of 1D. We are very, very difficult at actually figuring out small differences. So this is one of the situations that we will talk about when we come to our discussion on pie charts and 2D constructs versus 1D constructs in general. So which of these line graphs is easier to read? Can you type in your answer? The 2D line graph, right? So yet we have so many 3D constructs. If you're using a tool like Excel, you have a plethora of constructs where you can actually use 3D. And there's only one place for all of those 3D graphs, which is in the dustbin. So again, when we come to the session on misleading graphs and graphs that are not really effective, we'll come back to this topic about 3D graphs, 3D constructs, the limitations of 3D constructs and so on. So if your data is in 2D, there is really no reason to use 3D graphs. If you have more than 2 elements, again, you don't really need 3D graphs there. And we will, as part of our extended constructs, we'll be covering alternate ways in which you can actually represent 3D data more effectively than using any of the 3D constructs that are available right now. Okay, which of these tables is easier to read? The top one or the bottom one? When I say easier to read, try to interpret some data out of the table. Don't just stare at the numbers. Try to interpret the data to get some insights from the table. That's what you will use a table for, right? Not just to look at it. Try to see which region has the highest revenue. Try to see how expenses are there for a particular region and so on. So for most audiences, again, the top one is more difficult to read than the bottom one. The bottom one, it's just easier to make out what is happening with the data. I can see in the top, in the chat window that some of you say bottom and most of you say bottom, but some of you do say top. Now look at the finer elements in the design that actually make it easier for us to figure out what is happening at the bottom table. So in terms of there is no unnecessary shading to distract you. There are no grid lines to come in your way. Coloring, you have to think about whether the coloring is actually making it easier to interpret the data or is the coloring actually coming in your way. So when we talk about detailed design of tables, we will see a lot of elements that can be built into a table to actually make it more effective. Coloring helps in certain situations. And that particular situation is typically if you have a large number of columns. For tables which have a smaller number of columns, we don't really need any help to actually scan across a row. We are able to actually scan 3, 4, 5 columns quite easily, right? What otherwise the coloring does is in this case, it lands up highlighting every alternate row. And that's not something that you want in this particular data. So if your aim is not to highlight every alternate row, you don't really want the zebra stripes there. And also the grid lines, they come in the way. You can see that in terms of the decimal points, there are extra decimal points in the top one. The alignment, there are so many different aspects that have been worked into the design of the lower table to make it easier for you to actually read what's happening. So when we come to detailed table design, you will figure out what all these small elements are. The very minute elements that you have to build into a table to make sure that you're creating an effective table. Okay. So which graph makes it easier to focus on the pattern of change through time instead of the individual values? the line graph, the bottom, right? So whenever we think of a trend, when we want to actually see what is happening, if lines work much better than bars. And this is an example of choosing the right construct for the right message. So very early on in the program, we will spend a session on what are some of the very common relationships that you find in business data, and what are the constructs that can be used for these particular messages, and what are the trade-offs there as well in terms of the relative advantages and disadvantages of different constructs. But the way we will go about doing this is to first figure out the relationship in the data that you want to convey. If you're not clear about that, you have to spend some time first figuring that out. And then we will map constructs to those relationships so that those relationships actually emerge from the data when you actually present your data. Okay. Not very clear about the question. What about any regression analysis? We are not talking about regression over here. We are just talking about time series data, right? So when we talk about all the different relationships, we will look at correlations as well. We will look at the 8 common relationships and what constructs actually map to each of them. Okay. So only one of these graphs accurately encode the values, and the other is a misleading graph. Can you see and identify the misleading graph? Okay. A is accurate and B is misleading, right? Why is B misleading? B is not misleading. A is misleading and B is accurate. Now, can you identify why A is misleading? A is misleading because the y-axis does not start at 0, right? And the moment we create a bar graph, and again, a tool like Excel allows you to do that. It doesn't really even warn you that you're creating a misleading graph. But when we create a bar graph, the ratios of the lengths of the different bars represent the quantitative values that you're actually trying to show, right? And the moment you actually skew the y-axis, or whatever the quantitative axis is, it could be x or y, in this case it is y, the ratios that you're representing are not represented by the ratios of the lengths of the bars, which is why it becomes a misleading graph. And of course, this holds only for bars. There is no such rule for line graphs. For line graphs, your y-axis can start anywhere because you want to show the trends and the differences between what is happening. And you're not really assuming or claiming that the length below the dot in the line actually signifies any particular quantitative value, but in a bar graph you are, right? Which is why the graph on the left is misleading. And you will, exactly, we fail to notice this. Now, if you start looking around, this is a very common ploy that a lot of people use willfully to misrepresent. So when we come to the session on misleading graphs, we'll spend some time on all the different ways in which graphs can be misleading for a couple of reasons, right? One is so that you learn not to create misleading graphs intentionally or unintentionally. And two, so that you don't get misled by others. It is very important to know all the different tricks of the trade that are normally used so that the next time you see a misleading graph, you can immediately call that out. Okay. Which map makes it easier to find all of the counties with positive growth rates? A or B? Again, here it is A. Why do you think it is so much easier for us to find counties with positive growth rates in map A versus map B? So if you see, it's not just the color strength, right? Of course, the colors on the right are more jarring, and we will come again through an entire session on the use of color and how you can leverage color in your visualization. But apart from the intensity of the colors that have been used, look at the map on the left. There are essentially 3 colors you need to remember. blue, increasing shades of blue, increasing shades of red, and a neutral color. Whereas on the right, you have to remember the meaning of 7 different colors. And when we talk about how our memory system works and visual perception, so there's a chapter session on visual perception that we will do. And in that particular case, you will see that our short-term memory is very limited in the amount of information it can hold at a particular point in time to do this processing. So you'll end up doing a lot of back and forth in the second map to interpret what each of these colors means. You can't hold all of that information together in your short-term memory. Whereas the map on the left, it's easy to do, right? You know what the connotation of increasing shades of red is, blue is, and hence it's much easier to actually keep track of that particular piece of information to interpret the map. Okay. Which graph makes it easier to determine R&D's travel expense? Can you put down your answer? The second one, right? So what is happening in the first one? The very impressive looking 3D construct. You can't even see R&D's travel expense. Very often in 3D constructs, we land up hiding the data more than revealing the data. And that's the problem with most of the 3D constructs. And in this particular one, it becomes a very big problem. So what is the construct we are seeing at the bottom? This construct is called small multiples. It was created by Edward Tufte. If you've heard of Edward Tufte, he's commonly called the father of data visualization. And he has a series of very nice books on data visualization. So he has created this construct called small multiples, where you go, if you are tempted to use the 3D construct, anytime you're tempted to use the 3D construct, try and see if you can reorient your visual to small multiples so that you can still compare across the different dimensions you have. In this case, we have one separate graph for each of these different departments, right? But the construct is in such a way that you can not only compare within a graph, but you can easily compare across graphs as well to get the insights that you need. But again, when we come to small multiples, there are a variety of design issues that we need to keep in mind to make them effective. So that's something that we will do when we look at multivariate design solutions and advanced graphs for visualizing data. Right? So when we come to the analysis part of using visualizations for analysis. So typically when we talk about data visualizations, you can use them both for communicating your insights and for making sense of your data, the analysis part of it. And our session will cover both. So we have equal amounts of both of these aspects built into our curriculum. Okay, in which graph are the labels easier to read? Definitely A, right? So very often there are these smaller design issues that we don't really pay attention to, which can really make or break how easy it is to interpret a particular graph or table. So again, when we come to the detailed design of tables, we look at all of these smaller elements. Every single pixel in your graph should be accounted for, justified for. Every small design decision has a particular kind of impact on how your graph is used. And so those are the elements that we will look at when we look at the detailed design. So just in terms of how the labels are oriented, does that increase the readability or decrease the readability of the graph is an example that you're seeing right here. Okay, which graph is easier to look at? Definitely the second one, right? The first one can actually give you a headache if you look at it. It can make you really feel uneasy. So again, just because we have tools that allow us a range of colors doesn't really mean we use the whole range of colors in our visualizations. So again, to quote Tufte, what he says is, when you're using color, above all, do no harm. So be very, very careful about the color choices. So we'll do a detailed discussion on different color palettes, color choices, context of using different colors in different situations. how is your audience going to interpret different colors? Because we also need to understand your audience and how they're going to react to not only your color choices, but all your design choices. Because when we create a visualization, very typically it's not for ourselves. It's to achieve a particular purpose by showing it to an audience. So we will spend some time also looking at frameworks that help us understand audiences and how different audiences react to different design decisions we might make for our visuals. Okay, last question. Which table allows you to see the areas of poor performance more quickly? Definitely table A. What is happening in table B? You're using so much color, so much highlighting, that when you actually land up highlighting everything, you highlight nothing. So again, the key to using color, the key to using any kind of highlighting to draw attention to a particular point in your visual is to start with an empty slate and be very judicious about how you are changing design elements so that you draw your audience's attention where you want. So in regard to this, we will be studying something called pre-attentive attributes. There are a certain set of pre-attentive attributes that humans instantly recognize, and we'll again learn how to leverage those in your visual to make sure that your audience sees what you want them to see in the graph. Okay. So table B highlights differences between fair and good well. So what happens is you have to make sure you know what the purpose of the table is. If the purpose of the table is to highlight where the poor areas are, the first table does a much better job of it than the second table, because in the second table, almost multiple things are getting highlighted, right? So to come to the same conclusion will take much longer. So there are always trade-offs in how much you want to actually stuff into a graph versus how quickly you want your audience to get an insight out of the graph. So that's always a trade-off. Okay, so let's now move ahead to a very simple data set. Okay. Now, if you see this data set, we have 8 different points over here. We have job satisfaction by income, education, and age. And we have 2 brackets for the income. And we have college degree, no college degree, under 50, 50 and over. Now, suppose I were to ask you this question. So we have 4 different categories, right? 2 categories for income and 2 categories for education. How does job satisfaction change for these 4 categories of participants in this survey? So for 3 groups, it changes in a particular way. And for 1 group, it changes differently. Can you make out which that 1 group is? Somebody has raised their hand. Mohammed, can you, if you figured out the answer, can you put it into the chat window? Did everybody understand the question? So we have 4 groups. The 4 groups are less than 50,000 income, college degree, less than 50,000 income, no college degree, over 50,000 college degree, over 50,000 no college degree, right? For these 4 groups, we have job satisfaction when they're under 50 and job satisfaction when they're above 50. And for 1 group, it changes differently from the other 3, job satisfaction. So I'm getting a large range of answers. No college. So under 50 is not a category. So your categories are under 50,000. So is that what you mean by under 50,000? Okay. No college degree, under 50,000. Okay. So I think some of you have got the right answer. But it's tough, right? You have to really work at getting this particular answer. Now, suppose instead of showing you the data in this form, you saw this particular table. So now you can clearly see that 3 categories are going up. So job satisfaction is actually increasing over time. And for 1 category, that is the no college degree and over 50,000, it is actually decreasing. So you can really see, and this incidentally, this particular graph is called a slope graph. It's a special case of a line graph where you just show a before after. Right? So you can very, very clearly see that in this case, the graph is really allowing you to get inferences from the data much easier than it was when you actually saw it in terms of the table. So here the actual answer to the question jumps out at you. You don't really need to work very hard to get that answer. But suppose instead of this particular graph, I'd shown you this graph, okay, in terms of clustered bars, and asked you the same question. You still need to work at this graph to get the particular insight, which jumps out at you in the first graph. In the second graph, you still have to compare each of these bars and then realize that, okay, they're all increasing, but the pink bars are decreasing. So again, it's not that all graphs are effective, but learning to identify the correct construct for the correct message or relationship becomes a very, very important skill to be able to communicate effectively with data. So that is also something that we will spend a fair amount of time on. So moving on to the topics that we will be covering as part of the 16 sessions that we have for this particular course. We'll spend time on choosing the right construct to convey a particular message. We'll look at visual perception and its application to quantitative constructs. We'll also do a detailed study on leveraging color and the right choice of color for creating effective visualizations. Best practices of table and graph design. We will spend some time on exploratory data analysis. How do you go about using a large data set and exploring it to come up with insights using visual tools? Interactive graphics. How do you go about creating interactive graphics that can actually help your audience also interact with some of the elements that you want them to explore? Dashboards. How do you go about creating effective dashboards? What constitutes an effective dashboard? What are some of the constructs you can use in a dashboard to actually make it meaningful? Advanced constructs, going beyond the basic bar charts, scatter plots, to advanced constructs when you want to do analysis over larger data sets, when you want to do multivariate analysis, when you want to do time series analysis, when you want to look at distributions, and so on. And finally, we will also look at storytelling with data. How, so we have a particular storytelling framework. So how do you actually go about creating an effective narrative for whatever you want to convey? If there is that one very important presentation you want to make to a very important audience, how do you construct that as a narrative so that you get the outcome that is actually desired? So these are the high-level topics that we will be covering. Regarding the pedagogy, we'll be using a mix of cases, lectures, demos, scenario building, exercises, and so on. We'll also have lab sessions. In terms of tool, we will be using, so the first half of the course is tool agnostic, because it is my firm belief that no matter what tool you have, garbage in is garbage out, right? So until you get your fundamentals right in terms of what creates, how you can go about creating effective graphs for different constructs, a tool can only do so much for you. So in the latter half, we will be looking at different tools. So yes, Tableau is something that we will cover for exploratory data analysis. Apart from that, and for dashboards, we will be using Tableau, we'll be using Gapminder, we'll be using Excel, and some amount of R for a particular session as well. So R is more in terms of just a demo of what you can do in R. Okay, are we doing a short project as an outcome? Yes, so at the end of it, there is a particular, on the last day we do create groups, and you do group projects and a group presentation at the end of it. where we encourage you to kind of put together all of these different elements that you've learned throughout the course. And I typically give groups a choice. It could either be something that you want to work in your own data set. If that is an issue, I can always suggest something that you can work on as well. But it typically works well if you can identify something that you want to dig in deeper about. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much what I've quickly wanted to cover. And if there are any specific questions beyond what has already been put into the window, I'll be happy to take more questions. Okay, there is no problem if you don't have prior knowledge of Tableau, because before I expect you to use Tableau, I will conduct a lab session on Tableau. Starting from first principles so that everybody understands the tool and everybody knows the features of it before I expect you to use it on a different data set. Right? So we'll have an entire lab on Tableau, so you don't need to worry about it. Okay, I will not be providing the tools. You have to install the tools on your machines yourself. Tableau, for example, the Tableau Public is free for anybody to use. So that's something you can experiment with. And Tableau also has a 14-day desktop license if you want to use that. Excel, I'm assuming everybody does already have. So I will not really provide you with any of these tools, right? Gapminder is open source, R is open source. So there is, anybody can use them. What is the tenure of the course? So there are 16 sessions in all, not 8 sessions. So there are 16 sessions on 8 days. So 16 sessions is fairly enough to cover the topics. I've been doing this for a long time, so don't worry about that. So 8 sessions, meaning we have 2 sessions on Saturday and 2 sessions on Sunday for 4 weeks, right? So that's 16 sessions. One session is 75 minutes. How many lab sessions will be there out of 16 sessions? So there is a lab session on Tableau. That's one of the main lab sessions that we have. Apart from that, so most of the other sessions are going to be exercise based, right? So I will keep giving you scenarios to do, cases to do, exercise to do. There will be one other lab session on Gapminder and animated scatter plots. So 2 complete lab sessions. Most of the others will be sessions where you do need to use your machines for smaller exercises, but not complete lab sessions. But some of it would be hands-on exercises, some of it would be theory, and there would be a mix. Some of it would be case exercises, some would be breakout groups, and so on. No, we don't cover MATLAB or any of those, right? So only the tools that I've already talked about. We don't really cover Python in this particular course. But as I said, most of the sessions here are tool agnostic. So you can use this, whatever your learnings across whatever tool you have of choice. Just because we're using Tableau for the final data set that I will be asking you to explore doesn't really mean you can't use Power BI or you can't use these for any other R, Python, right? These learnings extend across any tool that you might want to use. Tech knowledge heavy. This is not heavy on tech knowledge. As I said, we will, whatever you need to know about statistics, communication, and design will all be covered as part of this course. So for this particular course, at least, so there are other courses where we expect you to come with a basic knowledge of statistics, but not for this. But exploratory analysis, okay, let me take that one. So basically, when you have a data set and you don't know anything about the data, right? How do you jump into a particular data set and use your knowledge about visualization to learn about the data, to get a handle about what the data set is about, what are some of the simple elements there. So, and the tool could be anything. So the tool could be R, the tool could be Tableau, relatively more difficult to do it in Excel, but any of these other tools, Power BI, You could use any of these tools to explore the data. But again, there are some techniques involved there, right? So when you want to explore the data, you still want to be able to understand the basic relationship you want to see and what are the constructs that will allow you to see those relationships and so on. So grounding in that framework is very important, even to do a very open-ended exploratory analysis. So those are some of the elements we'll cover as well through exploring one sample data set. Excel version doesn't really matter. Any of the versions of Excel should be. Who is eligible for this program? I would say anybody who has any need to handle data, to understand data in any form, or to present data in any form. If you create any kind of reports, or if you are involved in any kind of analysis before creating the reports, or if you're also in a role where you have to understand data, this is going to be relevant to almost everybody who has anything to do with the data facing. Is there an extension to the course, next level? There isn't really an extension to the data visualization course as such. So we will be looking at all elements of visualization in this course itself. Right? We will start from the basic and go on to very advanced constructs within the span of these 16 sessions. Yes, there will be projects and assignments in the sessions. Somebody is asking if there are going to be, yes, there will be assignments, there will be take-home assignments, there will be in-class assignments, and there will be projects. Yes, you will be asked to do a submission in Tableau, but you don't need to worry about that. As I said before that, I will be taking you through all the essential elements of Tableau so that you will be quite well versed in Tableau before you actually have to work on your project, which will come towards the end of the course. Okay, so somebody has attended Big Data Analytics. So as part of Big Data Analytics, which is another program that I offer with another faculty here at IMA, the focus is on the analytics, but we have a few sessions on visualization there as well. In this case, Vinod, we will be looking at a few more aspects in visualization. Over there, we cover some of the essential elements, but not all of it. And you don't really get enough hands-on experience there as well, because the visualization part is very limited to 3 or 4 sessions. We will be doing a far more elaborate, in-depth study of visualization, including Tableau and so on, which I don't cover in that, in terms of exploratory analysis using Tableau. Okay, are there any questions I have missed out? I think I've answered all the questions, right? All right, so I guess we are done. So unless there are any last minute questions, I think they should give you an idea both about what the program entails and what you can expect. Ajay, do you still have the question about Python data viz tools? We will not be covering Python as part of the course, but as part of your final project, if you want to use Python, I'm completely okay with that. As I said, most of the learnings transcend the tool that you use. So I'm not really averse to participants using their own tool to interpret and bring forth or manifest the different aspects of visualization that we will be discussing. Okay, so I guess we're done. So thank you very much. And if there are any follow-up questions, I'm sure our ExEd team will be happy to answer any logistics or any other questions you have. And if after this additional questions crop up and you want to ask about anything, any clarifications, be sure to drop them an email and they will forward it to me if they already don't know the answer. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.